Okay. Well, this was definitely an interesting season finale to Only Murders in the Building. The reveal of Sazz Pataki's killer was shown to us during the ending of episode 9, and before this episode began, I thought it was going to be all about finding out who the counterpart was, the connection to there potentially being a twin, and maybe a twist of some kind. But that wasn't the case at all. Instead, this episode was simply the explanation of why it happened and how Marshall, also known as Rex, carried out the murder on that fateful night. With an ending that definitely sets up Season 5 and 2 new potential cases for the trio, let's delve into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Only Murders in the Building Season 4 Episode 10, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Why Marshall killed Sazz and the connection to the clues. During the penultimate episode, we found out that Marshall was the killer of Sazz, and when Mabel pulled out the script of the Only Murders in the Building movie from the beers that Sazz brought to the party on the night that she died, we saw that this was his motive for killing her. When it came to the events unfolding, we saw that when Sazz was looking at winding her stunt double career down and transitioning into writing due to the fact that she just couldn't take the hits as well as she once could, age was catching up with her. This was what tied back to the start of the season where many of us thought that she could have potentially faked her death and escaped because she said that she'd know when to call it a day. However, that didn't mean faking her death and moving away, it just meant transitioning into a slightly different career. But sadly, that wasn't the case. We saw that Marshall, or Rex, had always wanted to be a writer, but he wasn't good enough, hence why he stole Sazz's script. Plus, when he was younger, his father would take him hunting and say that he was a killer and not a writer. This was where he learned the ability of being able to shoot with a rifle. When it came to the night of killing Sazz and being able to move her body so quickly, the 12-minute window was able to be utilized because he walked around the east and west building on the outside on the ledge, meaning the route was cut short dramatically. Then, once he was there, he threw her body down the garbage chute like she was a piece of trash. He also knew of Dudenoff's apartment as the perfect place to kill her because in the script that Sazz wrote, she'd gone over to the West Building and done her research so the movie could be accurate. Hence why she had all of that information on her desk. It wasn't her researching into a death, it was her gathering research for her movie, so it was as accurate as could possibly be. Let's not also forget, once he killed her, he walked over to her and stood above her watching her draw her last breath. Something that was actually quite sinister for this show. Marshall killed her because Sazz was going to reveal to Charles that the movie that she wrote but was stolen from her was getting made. And Marshall was worried that it would not only ruin his career in Hollywood, but it would also ruin the relationship that he had with his father, something that was already quite difficult for him. Marshall was holding the trio hostage in Mabel's apartment, and when he was on the cusp of killing them, he was actually shot right through the window. Just like how he killed Sazz. This was carried out by Jan over in Charles's apartment, something that almost provided a mirrored ending to the third season where Charles's apartment was the one that was fired into. Outside of the main plot, we saw that Oliver was getting married to Loretta, but she was moving to New Zealand in a couple of days because her TV show production was going there. This meant that Oliver and Loretta had a decision to make on whether Oliver was going to join her, or if they'd choose to have an unconventional relationship and have an extremely long-distance marriage. Something that will most likely get picked up in the next season of the show. I would say though, it was also nice to see Nicky in the show again, even though it was just for a brief moment. During the ending of the episode, we saw two things that set up the next season of the show. The first was that Sofia Caccimelio was in the building and she said that her husband Nicky was missing and that she wanted the trio to find him. She also said that what happened to him was deeply connected to the building. I know, a statement that was quite ominous. So that's something that's most definitely going to be getting explored. The disappearance of Nicky was also featured in episode 9 on a news segment in the background of the scene where Mabel was in the hospital, so it's definitely going to be getting a focus when the show returns. As well as that, the other main story that's going to occur will be focused on the fact that Lester's dead body was found and he was left in the fountain in the courtyard. As Oliver said, whenever the trio solve a murder, a new body seems to appear. And sadly, this time it was Lester. The question is though, who are the main suspects? I'm predicting that it has to be somebody from Oliver's wedding, as that was the event where there were many new faces that aren't usually floating around the Arconia. We know that Season 5 has been greenlit, so this story will definitely be getting explored. My review of the finale. As season finales go, I don't think this was the best that the show's produced, and I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that the big reveal happened in episode 9 rather than in the finale. Once the reveal happened, there was essentially nowhere else to go with the story in episode 10, unless they decided to lean into the whole idea of there being two people involved, which I thought they would do. And I was actually a bit disappointed that they didn't, as the entirety of this season was about doubles, twins, and pairs. Granted, Marshall was a stunt double, so I suppose it was just a bit of a deliberate misdirection while still being connected on the part of the writers, but it just left nowhere for the story to go in the finale, as we even kind of got the motive of why Marshall did it, with the script being the reason as to why he killed her during episode 9. When it came to Marshall being taken out by Jan and us finding out that she'd been living in Charles's closet for 3 weeks, I didn't really like that. I didn't buy it. Plus, I also feel like Marshall should have been arrested and faced punishment for his crimes. He was a disturbed individual, and I think that would have been more of a fitting ending for him. One thing I did like about the finale was the introduction of Sofia Caccimelio and her hunt for her missing husband Nicky. We saw a news broadcast talking about this in the background of a scene in last week's episode, so I thought they handled the transition well in integrating it into the story, so I imagine that's going to be included in Season 5. For a season finale, only having a runtime of 36 minutes felt quite short. I also thought that the characters in the West Building were almost neglected during the back end of the season. They got such a heavy focus during the first few episodes, and then right at the end, we didn't even see some of them. Something which I thought was a bit strange, and it just made the ending feel a little bit empty because there was no resolution or closure with those characters. I actually found the scenes between Charles and Sazz to be quite emotional, especially once they solved the case and Charles was speaking with her. Their friendship was something that you definitely bought into, and Charles missed her greatly. Getting her to sit in the writer's chair hit hard, and when he said, "Sorry you're missing all of this, you'd have loved it," it was a moment where you really felt for the character and the fact that she wasn't able to see her dream and hard work playing out. In this episode, we saw a different side to Marshall, and I thought he played a deranged serial killer really well. His mental state was all over the place, his tone of voice and facial expressions were blank, and you could see the panic that was behind his eyes. He had no problem killing, and the dangerous nature that he had was translated across the screen well. Overall, I would say that I'm a little bit disappointed with this season finale compared to previous seasons. It was a good episode as a whole, but I just don't think the episode had the large-scale, big reveal that we usually get, because it was already done an episode ago, so I think it hurt the show just a little bit. Now that this season has come to an end, I still stand by the fact that Season 3 was better than Season 4. That's a hill that I'm just going to have to die upon. I thought Season 3 was just a bit more fun, light-hearted, there was more room to guess, more suspects, the soundtrack and music was great, and the ensemble cast really delivered. It just kind of felt like this season led us down pathways for pathway's sake, which I think is a bit of a shame. It was a fun ride for sure, but I just wish the end of the season was a bit bigger in scale and had more of an impact. I definitely recommend watching the show though, there's not much like it that's out there, and I'm stoked that it's got another season on the horizon. So, there you have it, Only Murders in the Building Season 4 Episode 10, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on Only Murders in the Building, then click on the card in the top corner. There's an entire playlist there where I broke down every episode in Season 4. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of the finale? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.